Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful, beautiful day. I am an Aboriginal elder from originally from Wiradjuri country, so I'm a Wiradjuri woman. Some of you may know the Lachlan Valley, a little town called Cowra. I was born in Cowra and raised on the Aboriginal Reserve with my family under the Aboriginal Welfare Act. I am the chairperson of the Wyanga Aboriginal Elders Program and a member of the local Aboriginal Land Council. This morning I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nations, whose land we have the privilege of meeting on here today, and to pay my respect to the elders, both past and present. But I would like you to indulge me for a moment. We have this beautiful ship behind us. If I could just ask you for a moment to close your eyes and take just a short journey with me before this boat goes on its journey around our wonderful ancient lands. And if you close your eyes and if you think you're sitting on a wonderful one, just strip away all of those buildings and just think about, if you call it BE, before Endeavour, and think about the wonderful lush paradise that was here, where Aboriginal people lived such a healthy lifestyle, looked after their children were free. You are sitting on the banks, and all of a sudden you see this large animal coming up the waters. Now we know we knew about whales, but this was something different, and it had big white sails on the top. So around 240 years ago, Captain James Cook set sail from England in 1768 on the Endeavour, commissioned by the Royal Navy as His Majesty's bark, the Endeavour, with a crew of about 100 men on a world voyage to discover the transit of Venus. And we know about Venus gliding across the face of the sun, and it gives you the measurement of the solar system. But Captain Cook also had other orders, and that was to explore the seas for the submerged Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. On the 29th of April 1770, Endeavour reached the east coast of Australia, and Cook went ashore, which he first named Stingray and then later Botany Bay. So you could imagine the Aboriginal people who were sitting there and looking and seeing these men, particularly Lieutenant Cook, as I'm reminded at the time, with these funny colours, and they weren't the ochre colours that the Aboriginal people recognised. He didn't have any totems on him, any marks to identify his standing in the community, even though he probably had his medals on as Lieutenant Cook. When Captain Cook came in and he saw all of these wonderful, wonderful new fauna and flora, and some of you saw Avatar with all those different particular plants. At the time of Cook's arrival, the Gadigal people observed these strange sightings, the boats and the men. Some 18 years later, Captain Arthur Phillip set up the English colony in 1788, and this was due to Cook's discovery of the Great Southern Land. Captain Phillip declared these land as terra nullius, or no man's land, even though Cook's orders were to acknowledge and treat the natives amicably. Never once did the new arrivals treat the traditional owners as equals or with dignity. Within 2 decades of English colonisation, the Gadigal people were almost decimated from diseases, starvation, massacres, cruelty and broken hearts. In the beginning there was much despair. Since that time, relationships have been a bit shaky, to say the least. Indeed, there has been hostility, massacres, at least. Look, even until 1967, we Aboriginal people were not considered as citizens of this country. Today, there are still many cultures, cultural, legal and social issues, amongst others, to be resolved. Some believe that reconciliation is a way forward, and others yet believe that those will not be resolved until Aboriginal people are afforded their rightful place by recognition of Aboriginal sovereignty, with the signing of a treaty, as was done in other countries as New Zealand. Today, the Endeavour will retrace Cook's voyage, returning early next year in 2012. Only this time, They want to include Aboriginal people and pay respect to the original inhabitants and traditional owners. They want to take message sticks to pass on to the traditional owners. They want to pay respect to ensure safe passage on their journey. It's certainly not sovereignty, but it can be seen as working together in the spirit of Aboriginal reconciliation. There are many captains of industry partnering in this project. They are the people who can support our cause and talk to their board members at the board tables, in their backyards, at the cricket or the football. And yes, indeed, talk to politicians and the lawmakers to spread the word on our behalf, as we are only 2% of the population. Maybe this can be one of those occasions that begins meaningful dialogue as they journey around this ancient land. Maybe we can use this situation to have other Australians beside Aboriginal Australians to fight for our rights and better outcomes for our people. Maybe, as previous Prime Minister Rudd had apologised for the stolen generation, we will get another Prime Minister very soon who will apologise for everything else that's been stolen from us. If only the first Endeavour and the people such as Lieutenant Cook, who had sailed on her, had positive dialogue and recognition of the Gadigal people for their rightful place with respect and dignity. All those years earlier, one could only imagine how better life could be for us today, for all of us. We will never forget, but we do need to heal. So I wish the Endeavour good luck on its journey around Australia, and let's begin the healing journey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome you to Gadigal land also, the traditional land of the people here that we're now upon. In keeping with tradition, I'd like to present you with a welcome song. This is written in what's known as the Sydney language. This song is to protect you, to keep you safe in your travels and your journeys throughout this great land we call Australia. It's also extending a hand of friendship. Feel free to clap along. Your energy is good for us. Thank you.
This next song and dance we do for you is done without the iriki, yudaki, gurmul gunbug. It's done by vocal verse only. This one's emu dance, dragano. Dragano tara mani mani man, dragano tara mani mani. My rakamo tara mani mani man, Tarakano tara mani mani man, tarakano tara mani mani. Marakamotara mani mani manatara. Brr, ay, ay, ay. Brr, ay, ay, ay. Brr, ay, 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 ay. Chika! Ma. Tarakanotara mani mani man. Tarakanotara mani mani. Marakamotara mani mani manatara. Ay, ay, ay. Tarakanotara mani mani man. Tarakanotara mani mani. Marakamotara mani mani manatara. Brr, ay, ay, ay. Brr, ay, ay, ay. Brr, ay, 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 ay. Chika! Okay, this next one, we call this one Ugadandji. I won't tell you what this one is. We'll see if you can guess this one. One of the famous animals of Australia. Ugadandji Majama, Ugadandji Majama. Brr, Naingli. Brr, Naingli. Ugadandji Majama, Ugadandji Majama. Brr, Naingli. Brr, Naingli. Ma. Ugadandji Majama, Ugadandji Majama. Brr, Naingli. Brr, Naingli. Ugadandji Majama, Ugadandji Majama. Brr, Naingli. Brr, Naingli. Go brrrr, Anil Poka. Ay, ay, ay. Ma. Okay, guys, did you guess that one? Yeah, of course. Kookaburra, Skippy dance. Not a rabbit dance, it's not Easter yet. This next, we have our final song for you. This one's Gina Mana, means farewell, safe journey, au revoir. And we'll see you next time when you come around again. Gina mana, gina mana, gina mana, gina mana, gina, gina mana, gina mana, gina mana, gina mana, gina mana, gina, hey, gina mana, gina mana, gina mana, go brrrr, wanama, ay, 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 ma, hey, ma. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norma and Tribal Warrior Association. It makes us very proud, doesn't it? I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Eora Nation and the Gadigal clan, and we too pay our respects to elders past and present. We do this in the spirit of reconciliation as we walk together gently on the land and, in our case, sail softly on the sea. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome everyone here to the museum this morning to formally farewell Endeavour and the crew on this very historic voyage around Australia. I'd like in particular to welcome our guest of honour, Her Excellency Professor Murray Bashir, Governor of New South Wales, and also to welcome another special guest, Senator the Honourable Mark Bibb, Minister for Indigenous Employment and Economic Development. And of course, it goes without saying, we welcome our Indigenous elders, Norma Ingram and Uncle Max. It's good to see former councillors and friends of the museum here today, Ian Kiernan and Tony Horton. And we're welcoming Sally Basser, who's our first Assistant Secretary of the Office of the Arts in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. It's a very special day for this museum. It's really hard for me and the staff at the National Maritime Museum to believe it was only 10 months ago that we announced this epic circumnavigation of the voyage, and I can assure you there have been many sleepless nights and nail chewing and hand wringing at the prospect of what is really a very ambitious project and a very exciting one for us at the museum and for communities all around Australia. The ship looks calm and very beautiful behind me, but I can assure you that there's been a tremendous amount of work in getting the ship ready for the voyage. It's a 6-month refit program that we've just undertaken. Believe it or not, there are 17 kilometres of rope that you're looking at that makes up the standing rigging, and we actually ordered that rope from the Chatham Dock in the UK, which is where the original rope for Endeavour actually came from. And this is the first time the ship has that we've changed the rigging on the ship since it was launched in 1993. And I'd really just like to take a moment to thank and to acknowledge the museum staff, particularly in our fleet section, for really what has been a huge project to make this ship look as good and be as in finer condition as it is today. And thank you to Tullis, where the work, most of the work has done. I think you, and there are a couple of representatives here today from Tullis who've made the job easier and perhaps helped us a little bit along the way. Thank you very much. And today, of course, is, yes, thank you. And of course, the day of departure has finally come. Now, we are a national museum here, so whilst we have fine exhibitions in our collection based at the National Maritime Museum in Sydney, we actually work extensively with communities remote and regional across Australia. And this voyage of Endeavour is perhaps, as I said earlier, perhaps our most ambitious outreach task to date, and an exciting one. This ship is acknowledged as one of the most accurate maritime reproductions in the world, and we're very, very proud of it. And as Australians, you should be proud of the ship as well. Endeavour is going to travel 8,000 nautical miles over the next 13 months. It will involve 800 voyage crew. It will visit 18 ports around the country and open in 15 of them, with hundreds of school children coming on board to see what it was like on Cook's vessel. As a Commonwealth culture institution with a national mandate, as I said, we strive as much as we can to take our projects outside Sydney and around Australia. There's no better way of doing it than on board Endeavour. We're sharing it with all Australians. This ship will connect with hundreds of thousands of people who would not normally see some of our national treasures. Along the way, we're developing partnerships with various organisations to make sure that the reach of this project is as wide and as engaging as possible. I think it's appropriate here that I introduce Senator the Honourable Mark Arbib, Minister for Indigenous Employment and Economic Development, to announce to you an exciting new partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Senator Arbib.
Thank you, Mary Louise, and thank you everyone for that welcome. Can I begin by, of course, acknowledging Your Excellency. Can I also acknowledge the Indigenous representatives from the Tribal Warrior, Auntie Norma, Uncle Max, to Captain Ross Matson, to all the crew, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Can I start by thanking Auntie Norma for the Indigenous welcome, and of course adding my acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Today marks a very, very special day for the Endeavour, a special day for the National Maritime Museum, but it's also a special day for the Australian Government. What today is about when the Endeavour leaves, of course, is a remarkable circumnavigation around this country. It's a remarkable bit of navigation. It's going to be a remarkable trip. But also it marks a special partnership between the Australian Government, the National Maritime Museum, and also Job Services Australia. It's a partnership that will encourage reconciliation, but it's one that will also foster employment and education opportunities for young Indigenous people. The Australian Government is proud to be supporting 39 young Indigenous participants to join the HM Bark Endeavour voyage. We're providing $453,000 to purchase berths on board for young Indigenous people. It's part of an Indigenous pre-employment program. It will help these young Indigenous people to grow as individuals, to gain self-confidence, self-esteem, and also allow them to gain skills. The young Indigenous people taking part in the cruise will gain Certificate 1s in employability skills. They'll also gain certificates, but more importantly, they will gain job skills. And the partnership we have with Job Services Australia and with Jobs Futures will ensure that it's not training for training's sake. This is training that leads to employment in the maritime industry. Job Futures is one of our best job providers, and I know the work they are doing now in terms of mentoring, counselling, will hold these young people in good stead for the future and help them get employment. Now, the first 2 Indigenous participants will board the vessel in Brisbane for the Brisbane to Gladstone League. When these young people join the Endeavour, they will get training, they will get experience from the crew and the captain, but at the same time as that, they will help provide the crew with their own life experience and with cultural awareness about their own communities. So it's an important sharing of ideas, an important sharing of culture. It's probably going to be the most important trip that these young people will make in their lives, not just for themselves, but for their families and for their communities. Can I thank the Australian National Maritime Museum for all the wonderful work they have done, not just in preparing the Endeavour, which looks absolutely brilliant, but of course in helping to put together this wonderful program. It is going to change the lives of so many people. So on behalf of the Australian Government, can I say to the captain, can I say to the crew, good luck, safe sailing, and we look forward to seeing these young Indigenous people, when they come back, move into employment. It's a great project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Arbib. It's indeed a very important program for the museum, and we're looking forward to it over the next 13 months. We are working with a lot of communities around Australia for this voyage and working with organisations. And you might be interested to know that one of our partners is the Bureau of Meteorology. James Cook will be looking down with some bewilderment at this one, perhaps. But Endeavour is joining an Australian voluntary observing fleet. And it means that Endeavour is one of 90 vessels around the country sending back regular updates on the weather, the state of the sea information and swell conditions every 6 hours. So special meteorological equipment has been supplied by the Bureau and is on board and will gather information to inform us on long-term climate profiles, seasonal climate forecasting and the detection of global climate change. And the crew is deploying a number of floating sensors that for the Bureau, which will form part of a global observation system used by meteorological agencies throughout the world, a new role for Endeavour. Interesting how a vessel designed in the 18th century can have an application of this science today. And we're connecting with people online. There'll be a comprehensive online education program that's being developed with libraries, museums, galleries all around Australia, and communities, of course, which will together be a very rich resource for teachers and for students as the ship travels around Australia. And you can follow the ship on the ship's log and GPS map, both being features of the Endeavour Voyages website. It's now my very great pleasure to introduce to you our very special guest today, Her Excellency Professor Murray Bashir, Governor of New South Wales, to officially farewell the ship.
It's simply wonderful to be here with you all today on a glorious Sydney day. Senator the Honourable Mark Arbib, Minister for Indigenous Employment and Economic Development, Captain Matson of the HM Bark Endeavour and his crew, so many distinguished guests, Uncle Max Yulo, dear friend, and Norma Ingram. Thank you for your acknowledgement of country, and thank you also, Dancers of the Tribal Warrior. Sponsors, ladies and gentlemen, family members of the crew, and above all, it's a joy to see so many young Australians here too. For this is an epic journey. It's perhaps a journey of reenactment of that original Endeavour, but also it goes further than that, because we know that when Captain Cook first landed on this continent, it would change the lives of the Indigenous people here forever. And 223 years later, well, no, more than that, 223 years since British settlement, of course, we've been striving to understand and are finally gaining that enlightenment of the rich culture, the longest living civilization on earth that our Indigenous people share with us, the newcomers. And this journey will include Indigenous people sailing together around their continent as one people, hopefully with one destiny, together into the future. So it was very heartening indeed also to hear Senator Habib's words of the enormous efforts being made to ensure that more and more of our Indigenous Australian young people will realise their full potential, which of course is considerable. I have the joy and the honour to work in part also at the University of Sydney, and have in my role as Governor the opportunity to travel widely across the state and the nation. And increasingly I am seeing that process of reconciliation having effect as more and more of our young people, Indigenous people, are entering the professions and going on to take up very, very important appointments. So this is the early years of a trend that will become increasingly powerful and include more and more young people. So this journey, as they travel, the crew travels around our great continent, will also be meeting, as Mary Louise pointed out, with Indigenous and other communities along the way. They certainly will be reenacting one of the great explorations of the 18th century, which of course inspired so many other explorers to come down to the South Pacific. And the fact that also this ship will include training for those young people going on board, training in safety and in sailing. A new world will open up. And I'm certainly going to be watching the progress of this ship and their crew with enormous interest. And above all, we want their safety, their well-being, and many of us, I know Mary Louise, will gather here to welcome them home. So may I wish them, on all your behalves, on behalf of the people of New South Wales as well, safe sailing around our glorious continent, and a happy return to this beautiful region. Thank you all.
We're very pleased to have Professor Bashir with us today. She's a great scholar of Australian history, a great supporter of cultural organisations in the country. We're honoured to have you with us today on a very special day for the museum. The Commonwealth Government helps us to support the maintenance of this ship, but voyages, we have to rely on community support and sponsorship support to make it happen. And we're very fortunate to have support of a number of very important organisations who've provided logistic and infrastructure assistance to allow this voyage to take place. And I'd like to thank the following partners for their generous contribution to the project. Thank you, Toshiba, for providing the latest IT equipment, including computers and camera for use by the crew on the voyage. The History Channel will be running a number of short interstitial programs. I think that's a little bit like small adverts, I think, on Endeavour, and the voyage throughout the next 13 months. You can view these on the large screen you see here. And thank you too to Perth 2011 ISAF Sailing World Championships. This is the pre-Olympic sail trials that's taking place in Fremantle in November, and Endeavour will be a celebrity guest at the sail trials. Thank you, of course, to the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations, and you already know about that program, which includes 39 voyage crew berths for Indigenous people. Also, thank you, Caltex. Thank you for assistance with fuel. Thank you, Carnival Australia, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, New South Wales Maritime, our friends DMS Maritime, Taronga Conservation Society Australia, and to our media partners, the West Australian, to Austereo and to Channel 9. We really could not do this voyage without your help. Now, this concludes the formalities this morning, and in a moment I'm going to hand you over to Uncle Max and Norma for the handover of the message stick and the smoking ceremony. And after that, Endeavour's going to throw lines and set sail for the wild beyond. And I'd just like to take a moment to add my very special wishes to the crew of Endeavour. professional and voyage crew who will join in each port. I know that you're going to have the experience of a lifetime. I've got a little personal quote, Ross, from me to you, and it's a quote from Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, where it says, "Fly, brother, fly, more high, or we shall be belated, for slow and slow that ship will go when the mariner's trance is abated." Good luck, Ross. Thank you to our guest of honour, Professor Murray Bashir, and to Senator Arbib for joining us today. Thank you very much for the Royal Australian Navy Band for being here with us. And almost everybody in the museum has been involved in this enormous project, and I really must acknowledge your professional help and your skill at making this voyage possible. Thank you to everybody, but thank you to Vicky Northey, Leisha Malquini, to Peter Rout, Phil McKendrick and his fleet team, Trish Pascuzzo, Holly Shalders, Karen Worsfield, Des Paroz, Shirani Atas, Carly Collins, Peter Haggerty, Greg Tunks, and of course Captain Ross Matson, Dirk Lorenzen and all the Endeavour professional crew. Our thoughts are going to be with you the whole time that you're away. Some of us will be worrying about you and hoping that you're fine too, Ross. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today, and I'm going to hand you over to Uncle Max and Norma Ingren again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to do a ceremony now that will help Captain Matson and the crew on his journey. Now, Aboriginal people were not nomadic. We didn't roam across the lands aimlessly. We have some 600 different language groups in this country, and we stayed within our own traditional boundaries because we were protected by our ancestral beings. So when we needed to trade or cross our boundaries, what we did is we went with our message sticks. We passed the message stick over to the elders from one elder to another, and then we were welcomed to country, and that's what welcome to country is all about. We were welcomed, and while ever that special ceremony happened, then we were protected and we felt protected. So we want to do this now. Uncle Max is our elder, and Uncle Max is going to pass the message sticks on to Captain Matson, who will use this when he goes around Australia and goes to Aboriginal communities. We reckon this will give him safe passage. Yeah. So thank you.